1. As a quick preface, this happened years ago. I personally have not seen this past neighbor in years as they moved to a different state, and my family and I moved houses. I thought this would be a few slightly funny stories to some out there, and to others, you'd have my reaction, which was WTF. Anyway, here goes. I was a first-time homeowner in my early 20s. My wife and I had bought the property with the help of my parents, and were doing a sort of rent-to-own situation. When we moved in, we found that our entire neighborhood was pretty quiet and uneventful. However, we did notice that our neighbors right beside us were slightly odd. There was a guy, his wife, his kid, a little girl, his mother, and a family dog all living under the same roof. They never really talked to me until about a week after we had moved in. He was out letting his dog on a leash relieve itself when I went out to get the mail. This dog started getting super aggressive and was full-on barking at me as I passed by. The guy, whom I'll lovingly name Chops, stated that his dog was aggressive around anything that wasn't him or his family. I briskly walked inside to make sure that the dog didn't break loose from its leash and chase me down like a police canine. Some weeks later, I was mowing my lawn when I thought I heard a sports commentator. I thought it was odd that it was a Sunday, and I knew for a fact that there weren't any baseball or American football games happening in our town that day. I hear it a few more times and stop the mower to check out the noise, which eventually turned out to be Mr. Chops, who was wearing a large wizard hat, wielding a wooden cane as a staff, swinging it through the air, like Gandalf, and chanting in a Gandalf-type voice, like when he yells at Balrog to go F itself. He was doing this in the front yard for the whole neighborhood to see. I knew this guy was a bit off, but I never thought he would do something this strange. Over the next few months, my wife started getting super paranoid. One day when I was at work, she called me frantically and stated that Mr. Chops had tried to enter our home through the front door, which was locked, thankfully, and she was terrified of him from that point onward. Over the next few months, we started to notice that he would occasionally trespass in our backyard. He really wouldn't do much other than yell out his Gandalf chants and swing his cane around like he was fighting orcs. Other times, he would pet our dog. At some point, I saw him walking around the neighborhood, going up to every door and having conversations with the homeowners. He eventually came to my lawn and asked if I would like to attend a block party that he was hosting. This block party was meant to spread LGBT awareness, or something of the sorts, and I respectfully declined. This block party never happened, by the way. At one point, I was taking the trash out at 9 at night and encountered Mr. Chops Sr., Mr. Chops' father, and we literally scared the crap out of each other as neither of us were expecting the other to be there. This guy, I kid you not, was sitting in a lawn chair in the dark, no light, no shirt on, drinking a cold one. Chops Sr. seemed pretty nice, and I eventually found out that he lived a neighborhood down and mowed Mr. Chops' lawn every so often. He was genuinely a great guy, seemed to have his head on straight, and actually gave me really good life and lawn care advice on a few occasions. These are just a few stories from these interesting people. 2. When I was 11 or 12, we lived on a busy street. Regular houses were on both sides, and an alley reached up between some of the houses. The alley would be a popular spot for all the cats around the place. Most of the cats had homes, but there were a decent amount of feral cats too. We had some rough neighbors. The neighborhood started out great with a lot of kind old people, but over time, as they would pass away, their homes would be sold by the bank at a low cost. Then people rented out the spaces to some degenerate people who made meth on one side of the street, and the house on the opposite side sold heroin. The only old person left was this bitter old hag named Nancy. She never smiled, not even for her own grandchildren. She just had this bitter energy to her, like she was angry at you for even existing. Now, I don't know why she decided to target me as a child instead of aiming her anger and frustration at people who were constantly showing up at our doors asking for drugs. They would regularly confuse both of the houses for the sale location. So even though she was pretty old, 70s to 80s, she was a spry woman. She worked out and gardened every day. I think it was to a point where she may have had OCD when it came to her flower garden, because she was compulsive about it. Every day at 7 a.m. she would garden a tiny patch of soil about 3 by 7 feet. She would fluff the soil endlessly, destroying their poor roots because she thought it looked more aesthetic. I don't know how the flowers lived. Because the soil was so soft, every single goddamn cat would go straight for her yard to pee and poo in it. You could tell it would make Nancy so mad, but what can you do? They're cats, and no one rules over a cat's life other than themselves. We tried everything we could do to avoid having my cat using her garden as a litter box. We would let him outside on the other side of the house. We tried to make a spot like her garden for him, and we tried keeping him inside to use his litter box more often, but nothing worked. Besides, even if we were successful, it wouldn't stop the other 15 cats in the neighborhood from going to her house anyways. Regardless of our efforts, she would always come over to our house to complain about my cat and all the others. We were just the only owner she knew of, so she would direct her frustrations at us. I would go over to her house and apologize for my cat, but she would talk down to me, and usually shut the door in my face. Now, for the people who will definitely say you should keep your cats indoors, I know. I was a child at the time, so that's something I didn't know till later. At the time, the knowledge that you should always keep your cat indoors wasn't widespread, and there were far more outdoor cats at the time because it was seen as unethical to keep a cat inside 24/7. At least in my area, and according to the 2 vets we had at the time. So please don't attack me, please be kind and respectful. Remember, I was only 11 or 12 at the time, so I didn't know better. So, around fall one year, my cat went missing. I was utterly devastated. I sat at the front door every day for a week, waiting for him to come home. He was my best friend at the time, so I was very upset. We checked shelters, looked in surrounding neighborhoods, put up posters, and went door to door. Every house in a 5-mile radius, and after 2 or 3 months we stopped looking and accepted that he may have been hit by a car. You know that feeling when you just know someone's dead or gone? Well, it didn't feel like he was gone at all. I had a deep feeling that he was still out there. A few months after he disappeared, one of our distant neighbors came over to our house. They shared a backyard fence with Nancy, and they told us that Nancy bragged to them that she put a trap out for our cat and dropped him off at the local bird sanctuary 15 to 25 miles away. I just couldn't understand how an old woman would do that to an animal and hurt a child like that. I was so angry and in shock, but I was a child. What was I supposed to do about it? After that, I wanted to apologize to her again for what my cat did. I know that I shouldn't have apologized to her for her stealing my cat, but I just wanted to make amends. I went over to her house to apologize, but she cut me off and said, and I'll quote, "I'll throw away your next cat, too." And she slammed the door in my face. I'll never forget the utter shock I felt. She had this pompous look on her face that had "I'm better than you" written all over it. I was just so devastated for months, heartbroken that a human would do this to an animal, to my beloved cat. I was bullied at school pretty relentlessly by students and teachers, so it was painful to be hurt by someone I knew in my home life, too. We tried getting the police involved, but because she had the trap on her property, she could do what she wants. After a little over 11 months, I had moved on, still heartbroken, but the worst of the sadness had passed. We were considering getting a dog at the time, so we were looking into fostering to see if the dog life was for us. That morning, I was ready for school, walking out of our house, while my mom locked up the door behind us. I turned away from her and headed towards the car when I saw a rather emaciated and haggard-looking cat get up from the grass and run over to us, meowing. At first, I didn't realize it was him. He had never meowed before, and he looked so different. He had patches in his fur and a cut on his ear, but the markings on his face were the same. When it clicked in my brain, I didn't believe it at first. I didn't want to be heartbroken if it wasn't him. My mom was also stunned. We looked at each other and started calling his name. He perked up, but we still weren't sure. We opened the front door and let him in. He ran straight to the kitchen where his food and water used to be, and that's when we knew my sweet boy had come home. It was a long road to recovery for him, lots of vet visits, but he made a full recovery. I wish I had a recording of the look on Nancy's face when she saw he was back. She was so mad, but she never did anything to him again. She did continue to steal other people's cats, though. I heard of at least 2 more neighbors that had theirs stolen. My cat only survived because she had put him in a bird sanctuary. He must have been catching birds because after he was back with us, he became very proficient at catching them. At least, he always ate his prey instead of just killing them, and yes, again, I know we should have kept him inside after this, but I was a kid at the time. I legitimately didn't know. He lived for a long time, but sadly, we had to have him put down because of his cancer in January 2020. He passed in my arms at our home. It was peaceful, for him at least. He was the bestest boy. So sweet, and unlike any other cat I've ever met. Honestly, he was more like a dog than a cat, but that made him all the more special. I still miss him dearly. He'll always be my favorite cat in the world. Mr. Willoughby. 3. Just wanted some outside opinions to see if anyone else has been in this situation. Our neighbor, a woman in her late 50s, a nice single lady who lives alone, has a boyfriend but lives separately. This will come into play later. Is refusing to pay for her half of replacing a shared fence that she already agreed to. And I, a woman who is 27, would like to mention that we have always gotten along great with her until this point. We share a front yard and have always taken turns mowing the lawn and always wave and say hello with one another. So this winter our fence got badly damaged in a winter storm and needed to be replaced. Our neighbor agreed, and we both reached out to some companies to get bids. Well, no one reached back out to us, so I decided to contact a contractor that we have used in the past to see if he did fences. He got back to me right away and came out and gave me a bid. We let our neighbor know he was coming out for measurements to give us a bid, and she said great, but didn't come out and be present for it. Not a big deal, he was just getting some measurements and said he would text me a bid. So he goes on his merry way and sends me an estimate a few hours later. It's going to be $4,500, so $2,250 each. I screenshot the estimate and send it to the neighbor. She says, "Great, let's go ahead and do it." So I let the contractor know that we're all good and let's get it scheduled. Fast forward a week, when the guys are ready to get started, our contractor lets me know that he will need half up front for materials, and then we can pay the second half when it's all finished. I say great, and write him a check for our half. So the first day, the guys rip out the existing fence and our neighbor texts us and asks if we can get her a copy of the written bid for her records. I say no problem, I'll get it from them today. Well, I get the written bid she asked for, and a text letting her know I got it, and can give it to her whenever she's available. I would also like to mention I have given her the contractor's phone number as well in case she wanted to reach out directly. Well, this bitch proceeds to ignore me for the remaining 2 days while the fence is being built. Both my husband and I had reached out to her, and absolute silence on her end. So the day comes that they are finished. I text the neighbor in the morning with a bad feeling she isn't going to pay. Well, surprise, surprise, she texts back saying she's not going to pay because she never signed anything, and we can take her to court. So I go out and tell the contractor everything. At this point, I'm sobbing because I'm embarrassed and angry because he's done wonderful work for us in the past, and now our neighbor is being a complete fart. He was so understanding and told me not to worry about it, that money comes and goes, he's a contractor, and this isn't the first time someone has refused to pay. But at this point, it's more about justice, and I'm not about to let this lady get a free fence and scam us out of $2,250. Well, continuing to talk to the contractor that day as they're finishing up, tells me that he spoke to her boyfriend, and I guess she's upset that the contractor didn't give her a specific bid. Oh, you mean like the bid I've been trying to give her for the past 2 days? So the boyfriend asks the contractor to mail the bid specifically to her. Yes, she still won't come out of the house to get it. She is insisting this nice man mail it to her. And once they get it, then they'll pay, so whatever, that's what the contractor does. So for the past few weeks, our neighbor has refused to come out of her house any time we are outside. The other day, my husband was staining our beautiful new gates. And she pulled into her driveway, and once she saw my husband, she just backed out and left again. She wouldn't even go into her own house. She parks in the garage. Well, fast forward another week or two, and we have been enjoying our beautiful new fence and gates, and just enjoying the summer. I got curious the other day and texted our contractor to see if she had ever paid him since sending the contract. He said he hasn't heard from them yet, so that just confirms that they probably aren't going to pay. I asked him if it would be okay to wait another couple of weeks to see if they pay, and if they don't, we will take care of the remaining balance, and then just take them to court. Here's another kicker. The state we live in has a good neighbor law that requires both neighbors to pay 50-50. I'm also so glad that all of our conversations were over text, so it's all documented and saved. I just don't understand what she thought would happen. Like, did she just expect me to pay $4K and forget about it and keep being nice neighbors? I guess where I'm at now is just deciding, do I text her and say she has until the end of the month to pay the contractor, or else I'll pay it and take her to court, or do I just do it without saying anything? If you're still here, thanks for listening to me rant about my crappy neighbor. Any advice is appreciated. Hellfreezer's note. I wonder if the text she sent you would count as a verbal contract or written or some kind of contract in the state you live in. And as you say, you have your good neighbor law, which would hold you in good stead as well. Ideally, I think the contractor should be the one who deals with her, as he is the one she shafted. But it might be a bit quicker if you did it yourself, although that would mean you're potentially going to be out quite a bit of money. Although it's possible that if you just forward all that information to your contractor, it might help their case as well. They probably have more experience about this kind of thing, as your contractor said. It's not the first time, and I'm sure they've dealt with it handily in the past. Well, good luck to you, your husband, and the contractor, and enjoy your new fence. 4. I had been friends with this neighbor for a few years since I moved into my new home with husband and kids in 2021. This neighbor's husband works out of town regularly on the oil patch. Because he is away, my husband has done nice things for her, such as plow her driveway, chip ice off her roof, etc. I have also done favors for her and her for me. We live in the country, and neighbors are key in harsh winters and inclement weather. Additionally, throughout the year, we also hang out with multiple couples in our road in one setting, bonfires, New Year's, etc. My husband had noticed her husband commenting on things on OnlyFans models on Facebook, such as, "I would climb in bed with that," etc. When he showed it to me, immediately it made me feel like I wish I didn't know that information. It just gave me a yucky feeling. Fast forward to now. I had just given birth and was 2 weeks postpartum with my third child, and she wanted to come over with the other neighbors and their husbands to give a gift and have a visit. When she came, her husband and I did engage in conversation about how we both randomly worked in a small isolated community up north at different times. Turns out we knew the same people, etc. When they left, I sent everyone a thank you message for coming to meet the baby. Additionally, I sent her husband a picture of a guy we both knew from years back that I knew he would get a kick out of. Note that he has also messaged me prior about various things like old toys he found for my kids in his garage, or if my husband could check in on his wife after a big snow dump, etc. When I messaged her thank you for coming, she sent back a very kind message. I got a weird vibe a week later for no major reason, other than I had messaged a group chat of wives on the road for various reasons and she never responded. Instinctually, I checked to see if her husband had responded to my picture I sent of our mutual friend, and I noticed I was blocked and deleted. Oddly, we all had to attend a funeral a week after the visit at my house for a neighbor who died. When my husband and I attended the funeral, she was very cold to us, sat as far away from us as possible. I was really thrown for how to act, as it was a funeral, with my baby strapped to me and healing from my C-sections 3 weeks earlier, so I didn't approach her. A few days later, I decided to send a message asking her if something was up, if she was mad at me, etc. I explained how her visit when my son was born was great and how she sent a nice message back, but that I noticed her husband blocked and deleted me, and if she was upset with me for some reason. She did not respond. A few days later, my husband called her husband to ask if he was upset with me or us, and if I did something to offend them. He said, "Not at all, I haven't got a problem with either one of you." My husband asked about me being blocked and deleted off of Facebook, and his response was, "I was just cleaning up my Facebook." My husband asked about his wife. She also didn't wave to my husband when he drove down the road, when he waved, which was not normal. And the husband said, "I have no idea what goes on in a woman's head. You'll have to ask her," etc. Hubby explained I tried to message and got no reply. Later that day, she sent me an enraged text about how I was playing the victim, how I iced her out since my baby was born, and how outrageous my behavior was at the funeral for not talking to her, but talking to other neighbors. Note, she isolated herself from me, and I felt awkward about the husband block and deleting me. I didn't want to press an issue at her funeral with a 3-week only strapped to me. When I provided her with date stamps and how I tried to talk to her in the group chat and how her husband blocked and deleted me on Facebook and how I didn't know how to react, she basically told me she wanted to go no contact and didn't address anything about her husband blocking and deleting me, etc. This all happened in April. Now here we are at a neighbor's Canada Day party that she had to attend alone because husband was working, where she totally ignores myself and my husband, and we do the same. Then I look across the room, and she has my 4-year-old daughter on her lap and is playing with her. My daughter is chatty and probably approached her, but given she expressed to me she wanted no contact and made me out to be a terrible villain, I'm confused at this. If I was her, I would have just circulated to another part of the party instead of engaging with the child and holding it in my lap. Can someone weigh in on what the heck is happening here? I really liked her. We had no prior issues. My husband had no problem with the message I sent her husband or the way we interacted. I was in a diaper and breastfeeding the last time I saw her. She says I iced her out, but her husband iced me out on Facebook, and she began ignoring texts and waves. I wish this didn't bother me, but it does. Hellfreezer's note, I'm pure speculation, of course, on my part here, but I suspect the husband has been unfaithful in the past, and she took exception to whatever communication was happening between you, innocent though it clearly was. I wouldn't be surprised if he was dicking around while he was away. Maybe she realized she overreacted and she's now trying to blame you for it. Either way, if she wants to be no contact, embrace it. Be glad she's kind of taken herself out of the equation, because you don't need that kind of crazy in your life. And definitely keep your children away from her. Not to be trusted, I feel. 5. Across the road from our front yard, we have an elderly neighbor. At every opportunity, he finds something to complain about how we manage our property. He yelled at my husband this winter to take down Christmas lights. Apparently we're crazy for putting psychedelic lights on our garage door. It was one of those projectors where it was moving snowflakes. There's literally 2 other neighbors on the block doing the same type of thing. We ignored his yelling. Later, when he explained calmly he had eye surgery and could see it moving out of the corner of his eye while sitting in his living room, we removed it to accommodate him. My husband is a sensitive soul, though, and getting yelled at for the Christmas lights he was excited for on his birthday ruined it. During the heatwave last month, this neighbor caught my husband at the mailbox and felt it was a good time to complain about the handful of weeds in our landscaping. This hadn't been a priority for us since we have a baby on the way, and have been focusing our efforts on making the nursery baby ready. Plus, it's a heat wave. Nobody should feel obligated to pull weeds in 90-degree Fahrenheit, 70% humidity weather. Again, husband is sensitive and did some weeding. We planted 2 trees in our front yard. They're super tiny, literal sticks right now. We ordered them from the Arbor Day Foundation last year and thought they'd arrive much earlier. 2nd trimester versus 3rd trimester. We quickly get them in the dirt so they don't die. Neighbor is complaining that A, he cut down his mature trees to get rid of the birds, and our trees will bring more, and B, they're planted over our sewer line. We need to double check on that second claim. He could be right, but that's a problem we can fix next year. I'm still waiting for the left tree to throw out a leaf or something to prove it's alive. This brings us to today. We're out grocery shopping, almost home, and we get a buzz on our Ring doorbell. It's the neighbor, come to complain about the bird feeder we've had off the edge of the porch for the past year. We let him know we're almost home. About a minute later, we're round the corner and park. I'm sick of this neighbor being an a-hole to my husband and intend to give him a piece of my mind since I'm finally here talking to him in the flesh. Today he's complaining that our bird feeder is attracting hundreds of sparrows to his property, which are pooping, and he's too old to be cleaning that up. For reference, the neighbor to the side of us has 3 bird feeders also. This bird feeder has been there a literal year. We like it because we can watch the local woodpecker from our living room. I start telling him he's always got something to complain about and I don't want to hear it. This is our property, it's none of his business. I'm pregnant and none of these petty complaints matter at all right now. We can move the bird feeder, but I never want to hear from him again. We go back and forth for a bit. Apparently the volunteer trees creeping up that give our side neighbor privacy need to come out. He's a disabled veteran who has lived there 65 years, so he's always right about everything. He starts insulting us personally. Apparently I just know everything, don't I? And my husband always has his hands in his pockets. He even takes it a step further to accuse my husband of never having a job and criticize his plans to be a stay-at-home father. Bitch, please, I did not get an undergrad mechanical engineering degree and an automotive systems engineering master's to fall into your stupid gender role stereotypes. My husband doesn't make a lot of money, but he supports me in every way so that I can make enough for the both of us. The audacity to imply he does nothing is astounding, especially with how much extra work he's had to do with me throwing up first trimester and waddling around third trimester. He's also threatened to call the cops on me for having a bird feeder? Told me we're crazy, and he never had problems with the neighbors before us. That's funny to me because the kind-hearted souls who owned this house before us warned us this guy is a troublemaker. I told him we can move the bird feeder. Don't. But I don't want to hear from him again. He drove away and told me to have a nice life. We'll see if he sticks to that. He's 81 and I'm 30, so really all I have to do is outlive him, but I feel bad about this. I grew up with elderly neighbors to the sides of my parents' house, and my dad would help them out all the time. I'd plow the snow out of their driveways all winter. I was hoping we could have a relationship where we would help out once in a while, but he's just such an ass. The other neighbors, who were nice, assure me that it's him, not me. Grumpy neighbor even got brought to court a few years ago for harassing the kids of a neighbor down the street. I just feel bad about all this. I too am a sensitive soul, but I'm not going to take this. Bent over. Thanks for listening. Hellfreezer's note: respect your plan to beat him by outliving him. That's probably the best way. Also, just ignore him. If he's on your property for any reason, tell him to get off. Don't move the bird feeder, because in the past when you've capitulated and given him what he's wanted, it's emboldened him to think he can demand whatever else he wants. I would check the sewer line thing just as a matter of safety and convenience. You don't want it costing you a bunch down the line. And if it's fine, leave it. Screw him, basically. And congratulations to you and your husband on your new baby. Hey everybody, Hellfreezer here, and thank you very much for listening to Naughty Neighbours Episode 7. And thank you very much to everybody who allowed me to use their stories in this video. Before you go, please do hit the like button and share the video with friends and family. If you'd like early access to the video, support me on my Patreon page, which is linked for you in the description. You'll also find links there to the Hellfreezer Discord server, as well as the Hellfreezer merchandise store on Teespring. Also, just as a note, it does happen to me now and again, where I'll find people telling me they haven't seen videos from me for a while, so do check, if you're watching this video, that you're still subscribed. Pretty much every YouTuber will tell you that they've had subscribers tell them that's happened. I don't know if it's a problem that'll ever be fixed, but it does seem to happen. I did actually have a channel the other day that I know I never subscribed to, that it was suddenly in my feed, and I was like, I'm not subscribed to a Tesla channel, why would I be? So I unsubbed from that. So weirdness going on with the subscriptions, but do check, just to make sure you're still getting notified of when these videos go up. Okay, no other bits of business today, I don't think. Let me check. No, there aren't. So let's move right along to Hellfreezer's question of the day. And today's question is, do you like the smell after a candle is burnt out, or would you rather just put like a lid on it or something to stop it being all stinky? Personally, I'm neutral on it, although I do like a good scented candle. I remember there was ones I had, I think it was a vanilla scent, but the heat caused a chemical reaction that made it go all pretty colours. I'm quite sure I've still got some of those I've not used yet, sitting in a bag in a cupboard somewhere. Haven't used them because I haven't had a bath for a while. Don't panic, I shower regularly. It's just the bath needs replacing, so I tend just to have showers. But if I get that bath replaced, I will be having bubbles and candles and audiobooks and relaxing like I used to. It was quite good for de-stressing at the end of the day. Anyway, let me know what you think in a comment below, and before we go, let's have the answer of the day from a previous video. And this one comes from Naughty Neighbours number 5, and it was, do you prefer using a manual or an electric toothbrush? And today's answer comes from Julie Reap. I love a good electric toothbrush. As you said, Hellfreezer, my teeth never felt so clean. It also cuts down on the apparent damage I was doing to my teeth and gums by brushing too hard with a manual. My dentist always fussed at me for nearly brushing the enamel off my teeth. But at least I barely had any plaque build-up when I had routine cleanings done. Thank you very much for your answer, Julie Reap. And with that, I'm going to head off for now. I'm going to quickly see if I can run to a local store and buy some caffeine, because I'm running low. So until next time, thank you very much for listening, and take very good care of yourselves.